Форум. Говорить мы будем сейчас о социальных инновациях. Группа экспертов исследовала экосистему
We will be discussing social innovations, ecosystem in Central Asia. We will present to you our experts with whom we can discuss today how our social innovations are developing in the region, what is it all about and what should be done for them to grow. So we thought that we will have 3 experts, but one of the experts is connected through Zoom. He wanted to fly in, but his plane was delayed twice, so he will virtually join us. So it's one of the signs that even if everything works fine in terms of pandemic, the hybrid format and virtual format is still there, still possible. So also would like to attract your attention that it's interactive session. So those of you who did not speak from the room, from the audience, you can actually talk, you can comment, you can ask questions, our experts. So Philipp is helping me. Can you please introduce our experts? Why I am turning on my mic? My colleagues experts, we have 3. We have 2 of them in the room. Shoup-Polsson, who's international expert on the civil society for a very long time. She's cooperating with ARGO, and she had run a capital research on social innovations in Central Asia with the interesting result. Also Wali Rasta, who is representing organization of study and studies Porsesh in Afghanistan. And through Zoom we have Abzal Daribayev, who is the director of the innovation system from Nazarbayev University, NURIS. So hopefully everything, you can hear everything. So Tara, the first question is to you. What is social innovations? We say social innovations, but what is it?
Good. Seems to be open in more than just the region. But social innovations isn't necessarily technology or creating of a product. It is more the creating of space. It is civil society actually interacting with stakeholders to co-create new solutions to challenges. And by this, okay, I'm just going to give you an example. So there's a story of a water treatment plant in India. There was a woman who was still getting water from her well and was getting sick by this water. And they said, well, why aren't you going to the treatment plant? We have free water here for you. And in the end, it found out that nobody asked her what she needed to carry the water in. The required bucket that she had to carry, she couldn't carry it. So this whole solution could have been if they had talked to the group, if they had talked to the woman and the people they were trying to help to find a solution. So social innovations is co-creating that solution to the challenge.
Abzal, вопрос вам, скажите,
Abzal, the question is to you. So in Kazakhstan, do everybody understand what social innovations are, or do they understand it the same way, what social innovations are? Hello, dear colleagues. It was question to me, right? Yes, Abzal, the question is for you. Okay, social innovations, mainly. Upon the results of our studies, we understood that social innovations are understood in Kazakhstan as innovations for people with special needs, kids with special needs or disabled kids, and there are certain reasons behind that. Because the most active social innovation projects which have to do with people with special needs, and they're the most successful projects are. So this is the way how people perceive social innovations, that it's mainly with special needs, for special needs people. So you know that but there are projects which reached good results in the sphere of change of legislation, state policies. It started for more than 10 years ago, in 2013 around. So Ashikalyam Fund in Almaty started promoting projects on adaptation to special kids, adaptation to school environment. 2015, there was another fund created, Bolashak, and now it's the most successful cases in Kazakhstan. Now at the sort of legislative level, you know, certain amendments are made, and the kids have the right, practically in all schools, as kids with special needs have the right to receive inclusive education. They have the right to be accepted to school, you know, an assistant to the teacher for their education. Of course, not everything is ideal, but a lot of achievements were made or reached, and it's a bright example of a positive case in Kazakhstan. Of course, Abzal and another projects, you know, are directed towards adaptation of people with special needs. Is it possible for Abzal to hear me? Well, you will have a chance to share, you know, cases from Kazakhstan. First, we want to talk about definitions. In Afghanistan, how do people understand what social innovation is? How do they perceive it?
Thank you very much. So before discussing social innovation, I just want to mention one point, that the social innovation, the concept and research that I've conducted, it was 3 months ago, and before the political change in Afghanistan. And right now I'm not talking about the Taliban-run Afghanistan, but 3 months ago Afghanistan. So the term social innovation, or the concepts of social innovation, is not widely explored in Afghanistan, but it merely measures change phenomenon among the civil society organization, social activists, social entrepreneurs. And it is defined as creating new ways of solving a social issue. And so civil society organizations, social activists' their approach to social innovation was creating new ways and developing new ideas to solve an issue in the country. So if given an example, I'd like to, there are 3 main examples that I would like to give. The first one was an organization called Art Alert in Afghanistan. So they visually brought the social issues through arts and to the public space. And for example, corruption, which was the main issue. And they provided a platform for discussion among diverse voices in Afghanistan that included public, private, CSOs, and government. That's how social innovation actually perceived in Afghanistan.
Спасибо, мы хотим потом еще узнать.
Thank you very much. We would also like to hear other cases from Afghanistan later. So Tara already said that there was a global study. So it was Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Uzbekistan, also representatives of Afghanistan, Kazakhstan we already heard, and Tajikistan. But in other countries, are there any differences how social innovations are treated, understood, and how they are developing? Countries which are not presented here, but you know that I know that you were joining all these countries together. So
it was a regional research project. It included 7 countries, and the book has actually been published in both Russian and Swedish, or I'm sorry, Russian and English. And at the end, you'll be able to get the QR code so you can access it. And with that, I want to throw in, please, if you have any feedback, please direct it to me. I would love to have some more feedback so we can strengthen this publication. But as for how social innovations is understood on the regional level and within the countries, I mean, honestly, it is still in the very beginning stages. It's not well understood. We know the term in all of the countries. And we tend to think, though, more on the idea of technology or of producing a product. Some countries look at it more in the terms of social entrepreneurship and social enterprises, which is a form of social innovation, but it is not social innovation of itself. So the region really is still learning about it and developing what it is, getting a common understanding, and then where it can go from there.
Скажите, есть ли в зале коллеги?
Do we have any colleagues in this room who would love to comment on that? How do you understand social innovations? Do you think you are involved in social innovations? So if you want to speak out, raise your hand, we will give you the mic and you will have a chance to express your opinion. Maybe to understand this, it would be interesting to hear different examples of social innovations. Abzal, did you find examples of social innovations in addition to the people with special needs or disabled people? Are there any examples? Yes, other examples, sorry. Yes, what I just mentioned, the general understanding or perception, it doesn't really mean that there are no other projects on successful social innovations which are from different spheres. I can list 4 areas, 4 examples. So the first one is involvement of citizens in engagement of citizens in improving state services. As an example, when state agency had an initiative and asked for the development of certain things like iComic. It's an application which was developed in Nur-Sultan. It's a platform of interaction between citizens and to allowing them to identify the problems with utilities, municipal utilities. So this platform was launched and it's quite popular, you know, in Nur-Sultan city. And it reached very good results, to my opinion. And it allows not to liquidate in a timely manner, you know, the municipal utilities issues, and also to monitor the issues of concern for citizens. Similar project, which is done by one of the active NGOs, the Theological University Friends, it's called City. This project is called City. So they involve in small cities, in the regional centers, they involve citizens to develop proposals how to improve their conditions in the city. So in the best proposed projects are funded by the budget of the city. So citizens participate in the process of choosing the right projects. Also, big number of successful projects with the social sort of aspects, which have to do with the development of the state policies on the innovation clusters development, which will allow to create certain hubs and create an ecosystem. And a lot of, about 20–24% of the tech is used, and some of them have social accent. I can name OKUL. It's a project on assisting in improvement of programming, you know, skills for both teachers and students. It is piloted in several schools, and they plan next year they plan to introduce this program. It's called Teachers Lab, and it's interaction of teachers on exchanging materials, some educational materials between themselves. It's a good platform. These projects are sustainable, so they make money. With that, they bring social benefits. In the sphere of medicine, there is a very interesting project. There are not that many of them, but we have some, and I could list several. It's a group of there is a group which initiated startup which assists pregnant women to properly prepare for the child, and they created good content for pregnant ladies, pregnant women, and so they are crowdfunding now, actively crowdfunding now, and the crowdfund and so anybody can collect or send money into their fund, and this money will be used to teach, to create teaching material and teaching, rural women and the pregnant ladies live in the rural areas how to properly prepare for their baby. So as for there are some projects in ecological projects, but very few of them are sustainable. I can give one example. It's eco products. Eco products, they produce successfully produce biodisposable dis dishes, and so they manufacture it, and which is sold well. This is just it's a good example, of from different spheres. Thank you, Abzal. Yesterday, during one of the discussions, we had a team which actually makes fabric from the technical. So which kind of examples of social innovations did you find?
Well, following Tara's and Abzal's discussion, so I must say that Afghanistan is well behind other countries in the region in terms of innovation, I must say, because, well, this is only the main actors that participated in this is NGOs, civil society organization, and social entrepreneurs. But the government institution, which is the main body, they have not participated much, and they have not involved in this. That's why I'm saying this. And the examples that the three areas that are highlighted in social innovation in Afghanistan. The first one, as I mentioned, was ARGO, a civil society organization. And they are providing a platform for exchange of views and information between different groups. They are promoting actually a culture of inclusiveness and tolerance among different groups through arts, and they're drawing arts and painting on the streets, even those in front of the doors of those corrupt government officials. So this way they actually expose their corruption, their incompetency. And the other example I can give is as in education system. There's an organization named Charmars in Afghanistan, and it was funded by a girl. And the main reason and behind funding this organization was that because of the educational system in Afghanistan has been not well developed, actually. In terms of logistically, yes, it was developed, but in terms of curriculum, in terms of approach to learning was not developed. So what they did is that there was lack of libraries, there were lacks of access to a good learning environment in Afghanistan. So they created mobile libraries. They right now have 4 buses. They had 4 buses actually, and they were daily around 300 to 500 children were visiting, and while they were visiting, there were libraries, and they whatever they wanted to do, they can. For example, there were those who were interested in painting, and they had the facilities to do so, and those who were interested in music, or even there was one, they had one mobile cinema on that bus, because maybe this is the reason that we don't have such thing in Afghanistan in schools. So the environment at home might not all be in favor of children while watching something on TV. So that's why they created a mobile library for the children. And also another example I can give is, this is more a social entrepreneurship. A lady was running, I must say, a cafe that the money that the income she received from that is she used to treat the drug addicted people, and he rented an apartment, a house, and they used to make them. That she took an approach that that those people who were drug addicted, they were willingness to leave that addiction. So because the government approach toward living this drug addict people is different, because they kept in something like prison. So this was not the case, and it was totally different. It was a very open environment. So this is, yeah.
Спасибо, очень вдохновляющий пример.
Thank you very much. These are very good cases, and it's very sad to state what is really happening now in Afghanistan, especially with people who try to develop their innovations. So Tara, as a researcher of the whole region, were there any examples in other countries which surprised you or inspired you, and you said, wow, that's wonderful that people do that?
I think one of the funnest examples that came out of this was, there's a hub, it's called I'm going to say it wrong, the Gear Hub in Mongolia. And for those of you who don't know, a gear is like, it's a Mongolian yurt. And what has happened is that people have left the countryside, they've moved to the capital city, and there are huge neighborhoods of these yurts. But they're not sustainable. They're not set up to be in a city setting. When it comes to hygiene, when it comes to environmental impact. So the Gear Hub is a nonprofit organization, and they were founded by engineers, and they have partnered with universities, they have partnered with corporations, they have partnered with international organizations globally to find solutions of how to adapt the yurt, how to adapt it to be sustainable, to be environmentally friendly, but yet also make it possible for people to afford to live there in the city setting. And their impact is pretty amazing, what they've been able to come up with, the fact that they're able to find partners everywhere, and they're working with the local community. I mean, they're working with the people that are living in these structures. I think that is probably one of the funnest ones that we found. But I do want to add that social innovations is very contextual. It is very different depending on where you're at and where the society is, where the community is, what the resources are. I mean, I'm sorry, Wali, I'm going to disagree with you. You said that Afghanistan was behind on social innovations because the government structures weren't in place. But in actuality, the people there were solving their own problems. They weren't dependent on outsiders. They weren't dependent on government. They found a challenge, and they created a solution. And that's what social innovations is about. And then after this, I hope you ask me why social innovations is important.
Тара, я спрашиваю тебя, почему важны...
Yes, sir, I'm asking you, why do you think social innovations are important?
For the question. Social innovations are important, and if we look at the Central Asian context, it really is about the next step for development. In the 90s, when things became, everything was new, fresh, independent, starting over from the beginning, development for the civil society sector meant developing a formalized civil society sector that's with actual physical CSOs, community civil society organizations, with mechanisms for the CSOs to interact with the government and back and forth. But the piece that was missing was the informal civil society, That is the citizens, the activists, people that are not actually in the institutions. And social innovations is an approach to engage the rest of the community into their own lives, into their own systems that they live in, into their own government. I mean, how we live, we all have a responsibility of it. And many of us think that all of that responsibility lies on the government, and then we complain about it. But social innovations is an approach to be able to engage and bring people into making those solutions, and solutions that actually work, because they were a part of making the solution, instead of an outsider coming in saying, aha, I know your problem, and this is how it's going to be fixed. And then they don't give the woman the right jug so she can carry the water home, because they never asked her what she needed. So social innovations is that part, and then it's sustainable, because they created it themselves, so they own it, they want to keep it, and it actually works. So it's the next step to fixing like local level social and community problems, but also being able to engage with the government and be able to help with that governing process. We have our formalized system. Now it's time to engage the informal sector into their own government and their own lives.
Now, Tara, when you say engage them, yeah, that sounds like you want someone to engage them. But from the way you speak, it sounds like someone engaging with them might actually be counterproductive, because, I mean, the citizens solving their own problems, they're perfectly good at that, yeah? And when someone comes from the side, that might actually be more damaging than it's helpful.
Oh, very good point. I think that's where it comes in, where the engagement means we just need to let them know they can do it, that this is a possibility. We don't have to use the term social innovation. I mean, for example, what was happening in Afghanistan, they may not have known the words social innovation, but they were doing it. And I think maybe the next step really is to let people know that they can. And if there are activists, if there are people out there that have displayed an interest, then to give them the tools to instigate, give them the tools to co-create and create those solutions.
Мне бы хотелось спросить зал, скажите, пожалуйста.
I would like to ask the room, how much do you interact with such formally organized activists? Do you look into this audience? Do you communicate with them? And if there are any activists around you who are not yet involved or engaged in the official structure, but who can found it interesting, do you have anything to comment on this? Anything to say? I know Nora is thinking, so I think that, yes, she has something to say. I would like to share my experience. There are a lot of informalized organizations, and in our case, we worked a lot with initiative groups, with joint monitoring groups and assessment, and there are youth committees, JEC women's councils, the local self-governance level, and what I'm trying to say is that if there is a platform that is created, I just wanted to give you an example of what we did and in terms of what self-governance body created. The self-governance bodies, they have a legislation that regulates them, and that charter of the local community determines how formal, informal organizations can participate in decision-making processes at the local level. Because social innovations, and it took me a while to think, we have a very good initiative. It's called a local initiative. When self-governance body announces a contest among the local community representatives so that they could share their ideas, when they propose their ideas, very innovative ideas, and how to deal and tackle local significance issues, and if they like it, then the local committee and the local self-governance committee finance it. I didn't know that it's called innovation, really, and now I really came to realize that it's a very good social innovation in itself. Thank you. That's a very good example. Timur, let's listen to what you have to say. Let's see what's happening in Tajikistan with social innovations. So you're forcing me to answer, right? No, it's voluntary. You're forced voluntarily. What I would like to say is that everything new and beautiful is long forgotten old. And in principle, if something happens, something new happens in the social world, for example, in a very remote village, that is considered an innovation in itself in the region. For example, we have a lot of women groups that we get together and we create mini organizations at the Makala level, at the community level, and they create jobs, make money, etc. As Tara said, this is social entrepreneurship. So they make money, and their children are healthy, they go to school, and they get good education. For example, one project that we implemented was very innovative, but we created conditions for a group of women to make sure that they could recreate craftsmanship. So they started making clay pots, etc. So every tourist that drives through their workshop, they stop by there to buy things, to buy gifts, and this is how women get paid. Or, for example, in a different place, women get together. They invited artists from another city, and they make jewelry, for example. That's also social innovation for that place, and they have jobs. This is how they create jobs. Another example is, for example, in a remote mountainous village, we work on safe nutrition issues. Nobody has ever done that in the past, and you said that you have people who are not formally organized yet. We're trying to get activists in rural areas and mountainous areas that are very remote. We're trying to get them together to make sure that they learn how to eat properly, how to give proper food to their children, to make sure that they can avoid any complex diseases. And I think that the fact that the activities that are aimed at improvement of livelihood of people in any place, it could be an urban settings or a remote area and rural area, or contribution, so any contribution that's made there would be considered a social innovation. Thank you. Thank you. If that's the case, and I think that we'll agree with the common idea that social innovations is a good thing. However, why do we then have so few people? We have like thousands of people who deal with social innovations. And is it barriers, obstacles, or maybe they consider it's not necessary to get together? It's going to develop by itself, or as activist communities, they develop by themselves. So maybe that's a question to everyone, to all our speakers. Do you see any obstacles towards social innovations, or should it take some time for us to get the idea and learn how to do it? Abzal, Tara is saying that you have to answer first. All right, thank you. But I cannot speak on behalf of all the countries of Central Asia. I'm going to be talking for Kazakhstan only. I can say that the truth is that it is the time to start talking and promoting social innovations. The reason for that is that for Kazakhstan, it's important now because in terms of ecosystem development, startups and systems, the government has done a lot, and there is a Astana hub, there is an innovation Nazarbayev Institute, University, and so on and so forth. A lot has already been done in terms of strong startups in Kazakhstan. There is a digitalization trend in Kazakhstan. There is a trend for the community that listens, as head of the government defined. So there are there is some background for that. There's some good settings for that, and some very good projects. They may not be considering themselves social innovators, but there are quite a few projects, and we see them, and they're successful. That's why this area, I believe, it's time to actually develop this area, promote it, and the term of social innovations should be introduced into different programs. We should create very good networking, where we get all stakeholders involved. So I think it is the time now to talk about social innovations and promote them.
You want to?
Okay. Well, in addition to, if we generally speak, the main challenge and barriers that impede social innovation in Afghanistan, generally it's lack of security. But if we speak specifically about the challenge regarding social innovation, is that while I was interacting with the social activists, social entrepreneurs, and government representatives, what was the main challenge for them was that the lack of financial resources for them. Because over the last 20 years, most of the projects or most of the finance and expenditure of the country were from foreign aid and development aid. So there was a problem and the wrong concept that we should always receive foreign aid to implement an idea. So the other thing was that administrative procedure or administrative bottlenecks in Afghanistan's administration and institutions. There were, while an organization, while a starter wanted to start, so they need to, they have to cross, or at least lots of obstacles ahead of them. For example, registering, it takes a very long time, and tax filing takes a very long time, as well as other issues that they have. And there are also lack of policies in promoting, fostering social innovation in Afghanistan. So there were also some other things that, for example, the USAID and UNDP funded lots of projects and that wanted to promote innovation, actually, that were morally technological innovation. And people used to understand this way, that there should be a project and international donors should inject them so that they can implement their ideas. Actually, this was, I think, the main challenge that they were in Afghanistan.
Спасибо. Это, наверное...
Thank you. That's probably not just for Afghanistan, because we all know that in our countries as well, we have the same problem. People are waiting for an international fund to come in to issue a grant or something, or fund it and somehow. And when there is no international fund, we close this project and start working on something else.
For social innovation was because the international projects, they open a temporary space where a locally led social innovation, because there is ownership, it was started on the ground, it's more likely to continue on. And when it comes to like other challenges for social innovation in the region, I mean, at the country level and at the regional level, we don't have any champions. There isn't a voice or two voices or three voices saying, we need this. It's just, right now, it's just a whisper. There is just a handful of people who know what this is and is talking about it. But to make this go ahead, we need more voices. We need champions that talks about what social innovations is, why we need it, how to use it. And they talk at all levels. I mean, it is the citizens, it is the activists, it is the CSOs, and it's at the government level and the international organizations. Because they're not really here talking about social innovations. They're talking more about social entrepreneurships, but not social innovation. And we need civil society, we need the champions, and we need people to push to get this in the strategies, to get it in the political strategies, and to get it in the international organizations in their strategy for development. Because it really seems like this is what is needed to move Central Asia to that next level. And we need regional leaders. there actually are very, very few regional civil society leaders. People are, of course, they're interested in their own country and their own topic. But to get stronger, we all have to move together. But unfortunately, there aren't very many out there that are looking at this from the regional perspective. And so I'm going to challenge everybody in this room and those that are listening is to also think beyond your backyard and think through your neighborhood and become champions on that way as well.
Спасибо, я думаю, что...
Thank you. I think that Tara's inspiring speech deserves a round of applause. What's very interesting is that on one hand, these are local initiatives, but on the other hand, that's the expansion for the regional expansion. Have there ever been examples of maybe of something that would start as a national initiative, then it would roll out to a region, or the other way around? We in our countries try to implement some international projects. Are there any examples in your research, in your study?
I only looked at the regional component. I know, I mean, the best is I4C, and there's discussions there of having shared initiatives and duplicating and replicating experiences. For example, in the LAC region, they have I forget what it's called, but it's a shared resource platform. I have this resource, it's available to you, and you put your resources out there and it's available to me. So it's crowd resourcing. Instead of crowdfunding, it's crowd resourcing, and it's supporting each other in that way, which is a brilliant idea that could actually be replicated, adapted and replicated over into this region. And so to make it more international is, again, we need the platforms, we need the communication, we need to know what's happening elsewhere so that we can say, oh, that's a great idea. If we do this and this, it's going to work here as well.
Оля, здесь еще был голос из зала.
Да, конечно.
There was a voice from the audience here. Tara, you stole my words, took the words from my mouth. A lot of international organizations, they use a mechanism, some sort of mechanism then for themselves, then they introduce it in the region here, and they want to have this mechanism implemented and adopted here. Some of them don't understand that may not work here. And this is a wrong approach altogether for the local region. That's why it also has to do with social innovations. For example, new technologies. And you know the internet, especially in Tajikistan, right? The quality of internet. And applications that they suggest we fill out and be installed on smartphone. Yes, pretty much everyone has a smartphone, but these applications, they don't work. They don't work with our bandwidth. That's why we have to be very sensitive. And if we can find a successful mechanism that is successfully implemented in Colombia, it may not work here. Thank you very much. Keep the mic. Let's pass it around in the room, and Timur is going to hand it over from people to people. Dear colleagues in the audience, Timur has started this discussion as to what needs to be done, and we realized, and Tara started off by saying that we have to listen to inspiring examples and use inspiring examples, and we got some clarifications that we need to understand the audience for which we operate, we work. What else do you think needs to be done to develop social innovations? Abzal said that the government has to come up with something, adopt initiatives and regulations, and the microphone is right here. Just pass on the microphone. Thank you. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the civil society only. I think that we should first of all fight and combat our own laziness. We should not be afraid of the fact that it's scary or frightening. We should learn what social innovations are and start applying them in our work, because I see a lot of cases, a lot of examples where there are very good resources on training and social innovations. There are a lot of practices and examples, but we, for some reason, keep saying, no, this is very complicated. It's easier for us to use the methods the methods of work that existed in the past. So why don't we start using and apply and introduce the games instead of conducting 150 information meetings with the youth, for example? Why wouldn't we develop some games, quizzes, quests that would better convey the essence of the problem of bullying, for example, to the youth or the kids? Why don't we go to Instagram and TikTok and talk there to our youth? But we keep saying, no, this TikTok is not for us, this is not our audience, this is just for children. But our targeted audience is there for the most part. We have to accept this fact and use it. Use this new approaches on how to communicate with our targeted audience. Thank you. Manisha, do you have any solution as to what has to be done to make sure that social innovations develop in the region? Could you please pass on the microphone over to this? Yes, thank you. What I would like to add is this. About a month ago, we came up with an idea that we can use Zoom and talk to the Afghani women that live there and create some programs so that they could get distracted from the problems that they experience right now.
Meetings, programs, и это уже в сфере Facebook у нас.
So we already created a Facebook group, and not just for Afghanistan, but other Afghani women that live in other countries. They also join this group on Facebook, and everyone has its own opinion and idea, and they would like to work on this. And this is a very good innovation, and not just there. And they are happy. The women are happy. They're trying to make a change and do something, and we hope that we will be able to do something to help them. I think this is a great idea in such difficult times when people don't have any moral support. It's very important. That's a good job. Let's give a round of applause to Manisha for the great job that she's doing. Dear colleagues from Uzbekistan, Timur over there, and maybe somebody from Uzbekistan would join us, because for some reason, we didn't talk about Uzbekistan this time. Yes, this is Kyrgyzstan, I know. But I would like to share an interesting experience when gender movement was developing the strategy on how to achieve gender equality. This is a document that was developed at the grassroots level. And there was one interesting approach, and I think it may be interesting for all of us, for the civil society. It's called analysis of positive deviance. And I don't know if now I just imagined common people who are reading this. Now what I'm trying to say, I'm just going to tell you, and that's going to make it very clear of what I'm talking about. It sounds very scary, but in reality, it's very interesting. Usually when we start developing different strategies, documents, and so on and so forth, we look at the problem, what's missing, what the problem is, and what problems women have, etc., or other around women. But this approach tells us that let's look at those who succeeded. So some positive leadership, see what positive leadership exists, and see there are people that are in the same conditions, but at the same time they manage to do something and they're successful at something. So everyone in rural areas is rural villages is poor, but one family is rich. So we look at the reason why they're wealthy. Is it because of the family members or whatever? So if we get rid of all these outside factors with all other equal variables, we start seeing some specifics in the behavior of that family and specifics of activity and actions of these groups, organizations, communities, and so on and so forth, that we're able to find some positive practices that do work in our context. And these practices is what we need, because this is what you just said. Quite often some practices are introduced, and for us to implement them, quite often we have to get a lot of bruises on the way.
But if we look at ourselves with such a reflexive sort of a impression, you know, to those for whom everything worked out, and say, let's try this, try that. That might stimulate us to develop what we have, because to develop civil society, I think it will be very interesting.
Я, наверное, дам тоже предложение, чтобы добавили какие-то примеры положительных исследований.
Just thank you very much for so Tara, maybe so thank you very much for adding these positive examples, cases. So they ask to share, you know the results of your studies, so they can actually have questions. So colleagues in Zoom, if you want to add anything, if you want to share any solutions you know about, if you have such a chance to do so or possibility, Abzal, how do you see what should be done next in order to develop social innovations? Maybe you didn't have a chance to share your opinion. Actually, first of all, when we talked about the development of programs, it's important to create networking in the country. So even if the leader is a straight or government structure, so for them to unite all the involved stakeholders and NGOs, international organizations, could actually support them in this process, because it's very important to unite or join all the stakeholders, even in development of the legislation, for example, covering the issues of social innovations, because from what I know, so we were the only ones involved, you know, in development of legislation in terms of social innovations. So it's important to gather them at one platform, to hear everybody's voice, and then to develop right measures. It could be programs or in different areas of social innovation. It can be some other events. The truth is, there are a lot of instruments which exist or available. We just need a leadership. Thank you very much, Abzal. Colleagues, again, if you have anything to add, and we have taken this chance from you, Larissa, you didn't say anything, maybe you have some ideas? Well, in your presentation you say a lot of things, but we're discussing further measures, further steps. So social innovations is everything what's happening in the civil society or in the society for the benefit of people. You know, it's culture, sport, well-being, healthcare. So all of these things have to do with the social sphere, and humans, they need to implement their initiatives. But if they do not find support, and if this issue has to be resolved, people join their efforts. I remember just two examples in Kyrgyzstan, a very remote village in Darak. They didn't have kindergarten. And some activist, a person with an active civil position, they gathered, local citizens gatherings. They built a kindergarten. In order to get funding, he actually stayed overnight in the administration to get the money. Now that we've been there, and it's a wonderful kindergarten. Another example, a young guy, he's disabled, and he went through all the problems and all this. Now he has an education, he's in college now, but he is uniting young people around him, and he proposes initiatives to share the parents, share information with parents. Do not be afraid to send your disabled kids to school, because we do not have inclusive education. It's integration, but kids should get education. And a lot of parents come into the meeting with him. They understand, they realize, they change their attitude towards school, and they start looking for different possibilities to send their disabled kids to school. Thank you, Larissa. Philip, you highlight the results really well. Maybe you can actually start. I can make several resumes. Okay, so a lot of things are understood by people behind social innovation, but to some extent they are the same. It has to do with social realities, social problems. That's somebody's mic. It's interference. That's mine. Okay, there's a new mic coming. Okay. Education or equipment is tired. So from one side, we have the situation with the social issues, issues which do not always have a social character or essence, but they are important in some social environment, and we'll look at them through the prism, social prism. And second thing is, when we talk about innovations, yes, in the beginning, everybody thinks about technologies. But in reality, innovation is about creating some new solution for a social issue or a transfer of any idea from one context to a local context, adapting it to resolve the situation. This is the key. It's a transfer of some ideas, principles, and approaches to create favorable environment for this to happen. And there are key values in this: openness, empathy, readiness to listen. These key things, which especially in the civil sector, more or less exist, but as for the international projects, it's not always present. So we should strengthen that element. Thank you very much. For me, the eye-opening thing became that the social innovations or research and studies, when I started reading it, social innovations, it's a new opportunity to revive civil sector, to involve new people into this work, and the new chance to sort of show for some informal groups to demonstrate themselves. And the team which work with Tara, it's a lot of different examples or case studies with links, with the descriptions and everything, So it's this inspiration which is necessary for our NGOs and non-formal organizations to start its work in the sphere of social innovations, right? Tara, Wali, do you want to add anything?
I think the other piece that I want to add that we have not talked about is in this research, one of the objectives was to see if social innovations actually create civic space and help to defend and create new spaces. And just by looking at hearing these examples in the room, the answer is yes. I mean, Manisha's example of girls that are not able to get together, they're not able to speak. They created a space that those girls can, freedom of association, assembly, and speech. So the answer is, yes, social innovations does create new space. And that's something that we haven't really talked about here, but it's vitally important for the advancement of our society so that we can become stronger together and we can stand together. And this is really important.
Спасибо за уточнение, Вали.
Thank you very much, Wali.
One point and emphasize on partnership and networking in the region. And there's one thing that I have noticed is that while an individual is having an idea in solving a societal challenge, so then there needs to be an address for he or she to go or to consult that, or at least there should be facilities so that he or she should openly discuss this, the idea and how to solve it and how to implement it. I think that platform and that room is not available yet. I think we need to, if possible, we need to think of that too.
Спасибо, но я думаю, что мы можем распространять
I thank you, but we can distribute information about innovation for change, our representativity in the in the networks. Let's come up and create such a platform. It will be our social innovation, our small social innovation. Dear friends, we will give the mics for the closure of our forum. Kaisha, please. Okay, let's thank our two wonderful moderators. They left everything from home. They were flying from Germany. They are spending all these days with us. Thank you very much, Olga and Philip, that you were working for the whole day with us. There are still 2 more days.
Okay, I'll continue in English because it's more comfortable than me, but it might be less comfortable for you guys, and I'm sorry for that. So I'm honored to have this privilege to close today's session, and actually, this is really an wonderful group of people from all around the world, not from only the region, right? We have